Greetings and welcome to the Southside Help Center show. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. This is a live call-in show, so please, by all means, give us a call here at the station. Our number here is 312-738-1060. It is a live call-in show, so please, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, call me here at the station, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. This is the Southside Help Center show, and again, the Southside Help Center is a community service organization. We're located on the south side of Chicago. Our address is 10220 South Halsted. We're located on the south side of Chicago. Also, you can get us on the web, www.southsidehelp.org, or you can call the agency 773-445-5445, or you may see us out in the field. We do HIV testing and counseling, so we have 2 mobile units that are all over the city of Chicago. Every single day we're out there in the field, so you might catch us out there on the fly, and if you do, stop us, find out what we got going on, and you can always receive a free HIV test. So please, if you see one of our vehicles out there, stop us and find out what we got going on. First, I'd like to pay homage to our executive director, or our former executive director and founder, Mrs. Betty Smith. I always like to say thank you to Mrs. Smith, and hello to Mrs. Smith if she's watching. Also, Vanessa Smith, who is currently our executive director of the Southside Help Center. We'd like to thank her for allowing us to continue to provide the necessary services on the south side of Chicago. Also, want to make sure that we give a shout out to our affiliate organization, which is AHF. We are an affiliate of AHF, which is the World Health Organization, and again, they are a phenomenal organization, and they are all over the actually all over the world doing HIV prevention and education, and we have been affiliated with them for about 1.5 years now, and we're really grateful to have that opportunity, because with AHF, we've also been able to kind of stretch out and kind of reach a lot further, and for that we are grateful. So make sure you check out our affiliate organization, which is AHF. You can check them out on the web as well. And again, thank everyone for tuning in. Southside Help Center has been around for just about 30 years, and in the 30 years, this is actually our 30-year anniversary. And in the 30 years that we've been here, we've been able to provide quality services. If you would like to know about more of the programming that we have at the center, by all means, go to our website. Our website, again, is www.southsidehelp.org, and there you can find out about the different programs that we have at the Southside Help Center. Not only can you find out about our programming, it'll also give you an update on a lot of the different programs that we have and the events that we got going on. We do HIV prevention and education. We also do capacity building. That means if you're a smaller organization and would like to know more about services such as the outreach services we provide, case management and other services, you can always give us a call. Also, we have youth programs. I've been talking about the youth programs on and off for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and we want to make sure that parents understand how important those youth programs are. And again, I always say help us to help you, and it is so vital that when we're talking about our youth, that one, we make sure that we have quality programming for them, and two, we always talk about peer pressure, we always talk about sex education and prevention, and rarely do we give alternatives. So we want to make sure that we provide alternatives so that when our young people come to us, we have some very valuable and quality programs to present to them. Today we're going to talk about one of those programs, and I say this because with this particular program, when we start talking about youth, it just does not apply to youth. This also applies to the adult audience out there as well, because some of the questions that I ask are rarely, if ever, asked. So we want to make sure that we're able to touch on this as much as we can. Again, if you have any questions, call me here at the station, 312-738-1060, and I'll do my best to answer those questions for you. I want to focus in on anger management. Why do I want to focus in on anger management? One of the things that I've realized when we start talking about providing programs to our young people is like, okay, what programs are not only quality, but what programs are vital? One of the things that I realized that when we do our mentoring group, I have a mentoring group, we meet every second and fourth Saturday of the month. We're there from 9 to 11. If you would like more information about mentoring, call 773-445-5445, and you can ask for myself, or you can check my extension. It's 4235. My extension is 4235, and you can get more information about the mentoring programs, because it's important and it's vital that we have this for our young people. So every second and fourth Saturday of the month from 9 to 11, We have a mentoring program. We do different workshops and things with them. Also, we have access to a gym, so brothers, we're able to play a little basketball, do some hooping and some other things, and that's for the mentoring program. But one of the things I thought about when we look at our programs and quality programs for our young people, one of the things that most of the young people in my mentoring group said, because it deals with from 8 to 18, you know, we try to keep it in the area where we can get those guys in as young as possible, but we do need them to be able to comprehend and process the information that we're giving them. And one of the things that I found out was so many of them say, I got a problem with my anger. I got a problem with my anger. I can't control myself. And even in the schools, when we've went into the school system, and so many of our young people are either out of class or being expelled or being suspended, or not only that, you got a lot of the Magic Johnson's Britscape schools they're full, their rosters are full, and it's an alternative school because so many of them are being put out of school for a number of different reasons, dealing with and controlling their anger. So I always say, okay, we talk about we got an anger problem or anger management problem, and the reality of it is when you look at that in our young people, do they really have an anger management problem or anger problem, or do they have a discipline problem? What do you mean when you say discipline, Mr. Cherry? One of the things we talk about with our young people on average, now if this don't apply, let it fly. A lot of times we're talking about 10% versus 90%. That means the greater portion of the individuals suffer from these conditions. And that's why we're focusing in on it. So when we start talking about anger management, we're talking about a great portion of the young people that we have that are in school that say to me that they have issues with their anger or problem with their anger. And I say they don't have anger problems. I'm going to go to this graph really quick. This is going to be, it's a little crude. Let me see if I can get it over here. We got the overhead. And then we got it on 3. Is it on 3? Let me open it up. Okay, let's do it. There we go. There we go. I think we got it now. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let's see. We'll push it in a little bit at 3. Let's zoom it in. Now we'll take it back out. Hold on. We're going to get it together. 2. Perfect. This is a crude. Let me make sure that you guys understand what I'm saying. This is a crude example, okay? We do have some stuff that we put together that's a little bit more refined. But this is a crude example of what it is that I'm talking about when we oftentimes talk about the fact that our young people deal with anger management issues. And I want them to understand what does that mean and what can be done. Because there's a couple of things that happen when we talk about anger management in our community. And when we talk about our young people going from 0 to 10. And we always talk about, again, a discipline problem. What people think when you say discipline, we're talking about parental versus child discipline. That's not always what we're talking about. Most of our children are going to do what they're supposed to do in our present. So it's not talking about discipline when we're there, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to do what they're supposed to do in your present. It's the things that our young people do outside of your presence is what we now are talking about. Not the things they do when you're around, it's the things that they do when you're not. When we talk about anger and anger management, when we look at this little crude overhead, one of the things that I realize is so oftentimes we go from 0 to 10. We go from 0 to 10, and it's no steps in between. And that's the thing that we want to talk about, because so many of our young people go from 0 to 10. But guess what? So many of our adults and parents do as well. Why do we go from 0 to 10? Why? Let's look at this graph one more time. One of the things we talk about going from 0 to 10. So you got at least 10 steps in between there. What are some of the steps that our young people can take to avoid getting from 0 to 10? One of the things that we talk about when our young people get from 0 to 10 are the X factors. So what happens is when they get from 0 to 10, X factors come into play. What are X factors? X factors are considered to be consequences of our action. So one of the things we do with our workshops and when we're talking about our youth is we're talking about reactions versus a response. Let me make it clear to you. Reaction versus a response. Most time when we react to situations, we don't think. That's how we go from 0 to 10. We don't think. Boom, in an instant, we go from point A to point B, and there's nothing in between. 9 times out of 10, when our young people refuse or fail to think, they make big mistakes. And a lot of times, the mistakes that they make could actually cost you your life. When we're talking about the X factors, we're talking about consequences. Now, these are just some of the major consequences that so oftentimes our young people have to deal with when you go from 0 to 10. A lot of times, because in the city of Chicago, all you got to do is look at the murder rate. And you know that a lot of our young people are being killed. Not only that, whenever that happens, 2 of them are taken out. Not just the one that got shot, but it's the one who actually did the shooting. And it ain't even about if you get caught, it's about the crime committed. So we got to make sure that we're making sure that they get the necessary information in between, so that before they get to the X factors, we can respond versus react. Most times we react, we don't respond. We go from 0 to 10, and we miss all of the steps in between. But because we're not talking about the X factors, what are the X factors? Those are the consequences of your direct actions when you go from 0 to 10. One, you may commit a crime where you can't come back from it. That means you might either kill someone or yourself be killed. Take a look at what we got here, because these are the X factors. Either you're going to wind up having gunplay, 2, you're going to wind up being locked up, going into the penitentiary, or 3, we're going to be burying somebody and dropping them in the ground. So we need to talk about the X factors. One, as consequences. What are the consequences that if you go from 0 to 10, and what can we do to start to knock some of those things down? So we're going to go a little bit further. I got a caller. Let's take the call and we'll go back from there. Caller, you on the air?
Yes, sir. You know what? You're talking great stuff. But the thing is, you talk about from 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 or A to Z. And what's to stop them in between? Their parents. That's what discipline, pride, but they don't get that at home. They don't get love. So what are they going to do? Go right into the street. When they wake up, they're mad. When they wake up, they have to go to school.
Yes.
We've got to change that. If you don't change that, I hate to say it. I grew up in Chicago. I went to the service. I somewhere. Maybe some of these guys can stay out of trouble long enough to go to the service. I'll bet you that'll teach them discipline. It'll put money in their pocket. They can go to school. What's happening out here right now for the last 10, 15 years? Nothing. Schools are closing. Grades are worse. Go to the service. They got the best education that you can get, but you got to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, and I truly appreciate that call, because you're right. And for a lot of our kids, that is definitely an option. And one of the things that you said, that they have the best education when they get to the military. But the thing is, so many of them have no education before they get to that level. So therefore, they can't even pass the test to enter into the military. That's one of the things that we have to look at. Is one, most times they don't even get the necessary things they need to get early on, that even when they get to that stage, they cannot pass the test. The other thing is, when you talk about 0 to 10, this is why when I talk about the mentoring programs, this is why I talk about the programs that we offer at the center, why they're vital. Because a lot of our kids are not getting all of these things at home understood. That's why we need to make sure that as a community, we take a more active involvement in providing programs where our parents are not educated. We can provide not only them, but we can provide our youth with these type of programs. The other thing is not losing the fact that a lot of times parents who have not or do not have the ability to teach, guide, and direct, because they're children themselves. So we have to take a look at that as well. We have to look at all of the different variables that make our kids in the condition that they're in today. This is one of the reasons why when we talk about what I'm talking about today, this is some things that I think if we put these things into play, a lot of times our young people may have a better chance of making it to 16, 17, 18, 1, without a felony, 2, without being killed, because one of the things you did say is they have to stay out of trouble. Well, the thing is, trouble starts early in the African American community because education starts late. What does that mean? Trouble starts early because education starts late. By the time we get our kids and start giving them the real information or this type of information, a lot of times they've reached a particular age where they've already developed really bad habits. So that's why we're talking about coming in early. And we talk about the process of programming. That's the other thing I want to talk about a little bit, is how our kids are programmed and pre-programmed, meaning sometimes they're programmed, don't even know how they got that way. For instance, this is just an example of one of the ways that so many of our youth are programmed or pre-programmed. Why do they get on the bus and go straight to the back? But they've never had to ride the back of the bus. Now, we know back before, early on in civil rights, where we were made to ride the back of the bus, and then we had to fight for the right to ride somewhere other. Now, because these young people have been so well pre-programmed, they head to the back of the bus instinctively and automatically, and they don't even know why. So that's what I'm saying. We got to start our education early so that way we don't have to start backwards before we can go forward, which is one of the reasons why with our mentoring program, and I keep saying, if you want more information about the mentoring program, call 773-445-5445. You can get extension 4235, and I'll be able to give you a little bit more information. But these mentoring programs that we have offer these type of services, and the Southside Help Center has been providing these type of services for a lot of years. We just got to get the young people in the programs. We got to get the parents to bring them to the program so that we can begin to provide them with the necessary information that they have or that they need to probably stop them from going to the penitentiary or going to the grave early on, and they can get the education necessary so that they can at least pass the test to get into the military. One of the things that I talk about early on with young people and the lack of discipline, and again, we talk about discipline in different levels. Some discipline comes from the parent, we understand that, but a lot of time the parents are not present, so they can't provide the necessary discipline. Some discipline comes from the school system, but because so many laws have been in effect that no longer can schools provide the necessary discipline. One of the things that I realize in our schools, because of the lack of discipline, so many times or oftentimes kids know that they can't be disciplined, so their behavior will dictate the same thing, that they cannot be disciplined, so I can do what I want and there are no consequences for my action. So we have to look at discipline on another level. One, this is the whole purpose of dealing with the 0 to 10. Let me go back to it real quick just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. 0 to 10, most times when we go from 0 to 10, we don't think about the X factors. X factors are what? You may wind up with a gun in your hand, you may wind up shooting someone or getting shot. If you don't wind up getting shot or shooting someone, you may wind up in a penitentiary. If you don't wind up in a penitentiary, you may wind up in the grave. So we got from 0 to 10 just like that. So now we're talking about reactions. Most time when our children react, these are the consequences that they have to deal with because there was no thought process that went into how they reacted. We're teaching kids how to respond. Well, how do you respond to some of the things that you got going on into the school? So even when you're looking at 0 to 10, what would be the first step or one of the first steps that we could implement that would make our kids do something different as opposed to react? So what would be one of the steps that we could do to teach them to respond? Now, when we start talking about discipline, I'm talking about right now is self-discipline. How do you teach our young people self-discipline? One, you got to teach them about consequences, because when kids know consequences early on, then they respect the discipline, one, that they're able to provide for themselves, because when self-discipline comes into play, it ain't about me having to discipline you or check you. It's about you being able to discipline or check yourself. Self-discipline, self-check is vital, because a lot of times when me as a man approach a young man and say anything, first thing they do is put up their defense mechanisms, and all of a sudden I become the enemy. So therefore, if you check yourself, guess what? You don't got to worry about me saying nothing to you, so you and I don't have a problem. So now key becomes self-discipline. So discipline comes from many different ways. And like I said, it can come from a parent, it can come from the school, it can come from law enforcement and other places. But how do we teach our kids? One, self-discipline. Step one, let me just make sure. One of the steps we were talking about anger management as opposed to going from 0 to 10 as opposed to reacting versus responding. One of the things we can do as a response is self-check. Boom. When you're able to self-check, you don't have to worry about me saying something to you or someone else. You can check yourself. Now, that's a taught behavior as well. So one of the steps we want to look at is self-discipline. Now, I'm not saying this is stuff that can happen overnight. I'm saying these are steps that, one, at least if you know there's steps that can be put into play, at least now you have something to think about. Again, when you react, you don't think. And when you don't think, you make mistakes. And when you don't think and make the major mistakes, you may wind up causing yourself not only bodily harm, you may wind up committing a crime, committing a felony. So even as an alternative, military no longer is an alternative because you have a felony on your background. So these are things we're talking about putting into play before then. And again, even as a man, think about that when you're talking about going from 0 to 10 and you're talking about a step or putting a step into place. And I say to you, what steps can be put into place? Reality of it is, how many of us can think off the top of our head steps that should go into place to keep me from reacting to a situation versus responding to a situation? And if it's never exposed to me, never talked about, then quite naturally I'm not going to get it. So we're talking about adding steps. We talked about self-discipline. The next thing we could add, what would be step 2? Step 1 is self-discipline, but here's the next step. If you don't have self-discipline, the next thing we want to talk about is self-respect. Self-respect could very easily be number 2, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. P-E, yeah, P-E-C-T. Now we're talking about respect. When you have respect for self, when you have self-respect, it's like automatic that I'm going to have to respect you. Self-respect, it demands respect from others. So when we start talking about adding these steps into play, we're talking about 1, discipline, self-discipline. That's a step that we teach, because when you check you, I don't have to. And when I don't have to, you don't have a problem with me for having to say something to you as a young man, as a man, or otherwise. So self-discipline is vital that we add self-discipline in as one of those steps. And when you have self-discipline, you're going to add in self-respect. If you respect you, I have no choice but to respect you. So now we have to add in self-respect. So now we're talking about steps, and I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying when I say it, when I start talking about adding in steps to keep our kids from reacting versus responding. We know anger most times when they say I got an anger problem, they have a discipline problem, not an anger problem. When you have discipline, you tend to not do or react in a particular way. We're talking about responding versus reacting. Make sure you understand, we're talking about responding versus reacting. We react to so many situations because we don't think. And when we don't think, we make bad decisions, and then the X factors come into play. So I want you guys to begin to think about what steps can go into play. We said self-discipline. We said self-respect. Those are things that you can add in that's going to keep you from going to the next thing. The next thing, or the next step that we always talk about, and rarely, because we done already got this thing. I'm gonna have to move a little more swiftly, but what I will do is I will come back on our next show or one after that and talk a little bit more about this in depth, because again, this is not something that can be talked about or done in just one session. These are workshops that we're looking at providing our young people, and I need y'all as parents to understand how serious this situation is with our young people and what we need to do or can do to start to bring together our young people's community and provide them with alternatives so that they're not reacting, that they are responding. Really swiftly, I want you to know, so what are the things? We're talking about anger. We're talking about self-discipline. When you provide self-discipline, I don't have to. We're talking about self-respect. When you respect you, I have no choice but to respect you based on how you present yourself to me. The next thing that we talk about, we always talking about stop telling, stop this, stop that. No, we're talking about reporting. When you're able to report a situation, and we're talking about young people in school, when you're able to report a situation, not only do you have you, but you have someone else to assist you, and that's important, that you have someone else to assist you in this process. So we have to learn how to report situations and circumstances to keep you from reacting to them. And then when you actually react to them, somebody will then be able to say, okay, well, he reported it, and then we failed to do our due diligence, and now it's somebody else that needs to be held accountable besides you. We're talking about accountability as well. So we want to look at adding in report. There's a few other steps that I want to add into this, but I want to make sure that you understand what we're actually going to, what we're actually trying to do is we're trying to get you from there to here. You want to go from here to here, because at this step you then obtain power. Now, power then becomes where you angry about something, but you got self-discipline, you got self-respect. Then you are able to report a situation or a set of circumstances. Now it's not just you thinking, but somebody else to help you in that process or in that thought process. It's not a reaction, it's a response. And at this point, you then obtain and gain power. That's what we're talking about. How do we teach, or how do we make our young people powerful? And when that happens, what then happens is this, and this is ultimately what we're trying to get our young people to do. When you look at going from 0 to 10 and you respond versus react, you start adding in steps. The steps may very simply be, I'm going to go over this because we're going to have to wrap up. Your steps may be, you may have to, 1, have self-discipline. Then you have self-respect. Then you learn how to report. Then you obtain power. Then when you get power to what? You get power to think. And when you're able to think, you don't react. And when you don't react, you don't get involved in the X factors where you wind up committing yourself to a situation or a set of circumstances that you may not be able to get out of. This is a brief overview of some of the things that we do when we talk about these workshops when we're providing mentorship. What does that look like? And as men, we have to say, do we even have steps that keeps us from going from 0 to 10? And if we do have steps, what are those steps? We have to then start putting in place steps. And the steps, one, will prevent our young people from, one, going from A to Z, two, from presenting crimes or doing crimes or doing different things, because not only do they think, but they think about the consequences that come along with going from 0 to 10. So it's important that you look at some of the programming that we're offering at the Southside Help Center. Again, we've been doing it for 30 years. By all means, come by the center. Check us out on the website, www.southsidehelp.org, or come by the center, 10420 South Halsted, or catch us on the mobile vehicles out in the street, or you can call the agency 773-445-5445 if you have more questions about the programs that we offer at the Southside Help Center. Once again, I truly would like to thank everyone for tuning in. Until we see you again, we bid you peace.